I really didn't know what I wanted to do. I loved fashion. I loved, pop culture. Just every aspect of that was something that always fascinated me. I don't think I ever actualized it into a career.
Welcome back to Have a Map, where we talk all things career. I'm your host, Mamadou Njai, founder of Dim Events. And I think we're only on our second podcast of this intern term, which is very interesting. And we're about to ramp up with a lot of guests back to back. But before we get started, I want to introduce Christian. Christian, say what's up to everyone.
Hey everyone, my name is Christian. I'm a current senior at Chapman University, and I'm also starting my MBA there as well. So looking forward to this podcast and see where we take it.
Perfect. And just to give context, Christian, because we have interns all over. Where are you right now? What city, state, all of that stuff?
Currently, I'm in Orange, California, but I'm originally from San Francisco.
Very cool. And as we transition to our guest today, who is a friend of the podcast, really like family out here, I want to let Katie introduce herself.
Hi, my name's Katie Nakamura. I am currently in Los Angeles, California, graduating, working in the workforce, just living life.
Love that, Katie. And real quick, just so the listeners have an understanding, what exactly is it that you do in your career, and what industry are you in?
Yeah, I'm in the fashion industry. I'm doing, right now, I'm in VIP relations. So I work primarily with celebrities, and we are working through marketing, and it kind of overlaps into marketing with the VIP process and seating and gifting. So I work closely alongside our team and internally just to get the product out, and also just kind of accommodating any, personal requests that may come directly to the creative director.
Very cool. Krista, do you want to take it from here?
Yeah, so I just wanted to get started by asking, how did you get into fashion? And especially being from an Asian background, there's not that many Asian role models in the fashion industry. So what made you want to take that route, and how did you get there?
Yeah, I mean, I really didn't know what I wanted to do. I loved fashion. I loved, pop culture. Just every aspect of that was something that always fascinated me. I don't think I ever actualized it into a career. I know when I was younger, I mean, even probably before high school, you don't ever know what you want to do, but you have this idea of what you could do, but it's not something that you're realistically thinking about the path. I mean, there are some people who are really like that. I was just, I think I was just more focused on, well, what do I like? What interests me? I think as a student personally, I realized in school, I was so much better at in certain subjects, I was so much better at a subject if I was really interested in it. So I was, I remember I was struggling in math when I was in 7th, 8th grade. I think it was probably around 8th grade where it was really tough for me, but I loved it until I was in 6th grade because it was so fun and I had so much interest in it. And then it got really hard and I was like, I don't like it anymore. But yeah, I mean, I think that was really not at the forefront of my mind. I really just wanted to be, I honestly don't even know where I started, but probably in high school, I really started to like fashion and the fashion industry. And, at the time it was huge to see the Mercedes-Benz Fashion Week, and it was televised on BET. And I remember just really tuning in and being so interested and fascinated by that world. And for the longest time, I think I thought I wanted to be a designer. And I was like, okay, this is what it is. I don't think that's something that I have the skills to do. And it really kind of molded and shaped into the retail side when I was researching majors in schools and, what schools had good programs that catered to the fashion industry in whatever capacity. I think I just really knew I wanted to be in fashion, but I didn't know what exactly that was. So I had never targeted a specific job title or career. It was just, I know I couldn't design. And then I thought if I went into fashion school or a school with a fashion program, what did that entail? And beyond that, I was thinking maybe I would go to FITM. And, I explored all of those options, but I never really knew exactly what I wanted to do.
And talking about that navigation of, high school, researching, different degree programs, what school did you end up going to? And then how did that kind of mold like internships and things of that nature that you ended up kind of exploring after?
Yeah, I mean, I ended up going to University of Arizona. They have an incredible program there that's called, it's like the school is Norton, and it's retailing and consumer sciences. So within retailing and consumer sciences, there's, advertising, marketing. It's really the retail side or the business side of retail. So it's super hyper focused on visual merchandising and managerial positions that are over retail. And I think the biggest misconception about retail when you're speaking to someone in the fashion industry is that you think retail means, a store in a mall. Retail can also mean Target, Walmart, Amazon. And I think those are the big things that we had studied there. So I landed there, and from there I was really able to explore all of those opportunities, all of the the options that I really was interested in. And I think that's where I really liked the business side of retail, but I didn't fully actualize it until probably maybe 3 years into, working in the fashion industry after I graduated. So it kind of was always in my mind, but it was never like, well, what career can I make out of it? It was more just, oh, okay, this is cool to be in advertising and learn about advertising, learn about visual merchandising, and more of the art, the artsy side or the creative side is what I call it of fashion. And I think finding that fine line between creative but also the business side is there, and it exists, but it's hard to define depending on where you want to go.
Okay, so you were mentioning how like the whole retail and consumer sciences also includes like an umbrella with like Walmart and Target, and that's not necessarily like this space, I guess, that you're in right now.
Yeah.
How do you like apply like the things that you're learning right or that you learned in college to fashion? Because fashion is quite different than like kind of any other industry. So I'm just curious to like how that translates from college to the fashion industry.
Yeah, I mean, personally, I think learning about, the business side of retail and understanding that there's a customer, that there's, the path of really just be like, customer behavior. It is similar across all channels, regardless of whether it's the fashion or, Amazon or whatever it is. And I did have a lot of classes that were about, more fashion focused, but it was overarching in that when you speak about visual merchandising, you think, okay, well, Target's visual merchandising isn't a mannequin, so we did things that were mannequins, mannequin style visual merchandising. And then you also have like, okay, what catches someone's eye when you walk into Target, and you talk about the, sale bins or whatever they have in the front, or like the seasonal things, and applying all of those things into any part of retail is valuable. And it would help me to kind of look at it from a holistic perspective and really understand, okay, when you're walking through a store and you're looking at clothing, but it's also like toys, how can you really actualize what draws in a customer, what people look at? And now, I mean, it's changed so much, surprisingly. The online platform, that was something that we never really discussed because it was always about in person. And I mean, online was a huge, deal because Amazon was so big even then, but it was so focused on the brick and mortar aspect of the business and of of retail. So that was something that was different for me. And I honestly applied a lot of my knowledge from my jobs after college more than I could in, from college, into those jobs, because the personal experience, the trial and error, and the just learning through what you're doing is something that I really applied more than school, to be honest. I mean, I knew the language and the vocabulary, and I had studied all of those things, but when you are in the real world, they don't care that a specific word, or the definition of a title of a type of business. It was more of really applying what you learned in just working.
Were there any, I guess, challenges or any like difficulties you faced? Like I was mentioning earlier, being from like an Asian background and not having those kind of role models, or like, because that's not necessarily a career path that is, I guess, that common for being from an Asian background. So like, were there any challenges or any like things that you had to I guess get past to get to the fashion industry and where you are today?
Yeah, I think personally, I had never really experienced anything. I'm super grateful. But when you talk about being in an industry that you're not so greatly represented, is definitely something that you look around and you're sitting in a room. I mean, even in the school that I was at in retailing and consumer sciences, a lot of my classes, I was not represented any more than maybe one or two other, students in the class. I personally was so focused on just my work ethic, and I didn't really have time to think about, the racial disparity. I think that is really hard to think about. And even, now it's such a big conversation, but personally working through all of those things, it wasn't something that I had, a big barrier that I was aware of. But I knew in visual representation, like what I was dealing with. But I really focused on just my work ethic. Like I said, that was just one of the things that I think I didn't really have time. I was catapulted into the industry at the end of my last year, or the beginning of my last year, but at the end of that year, going into my last year, or into the year of me graduating. And so I really didn't even think about it, to be honest. And I didn't have time to think about it. So now that I've, taken a step back, and, a lot of things have settled down, obviously from the beginning of, entering the workforce, it's definitely something that you see around you. But there's also, a lot of great things happening. A friend of mine in the industry is leading, and, he co-founded a brand, and he's Asian, and I think it's so great. And him and I have had conversations about, our parents, and I mean, it matters, what generation you are as well, but those conversations are important to have. And a lot of people, I feel like, didn't really have it in the beginning. So that was that change, and that, adjustment nowadays is really interesting to have, with people.
Cool. I guess moving on to, I guess, the transition from college to your job, what kind of steps did you take, like internships or job opportunities? How did you get your foot into the door? Because the fashion industry can be pretty difficult to enter if you don't have any background experience or anything.
Yeah, that was my biggest concern when I decided. I was like, okay, I'm really in fashion, and I'm in my, I'm about to enter my fourth year, it's my third year. And I was like, I feel like everyone I knew was getting internships. And, even though it wasn't necessarily, quote, fashion jobs that they were getting, they were working at Sears. And, our school had a really good connection with Macy's. And I know we even had people from LVMH come, and all of these things. And I felt like, oh my gosh, I can't visualize myself working in a corporate setting. I mean, no disrespect to the corporate setting, but I was like, I just don't feel like that's my path. But I was like, what is my path? So I think I went online and I searched. I mean, I saved all these websites because I was super into fashion, and I had saved all of these companies and brands that I loved and that I shopped at or wanted to shop at, because, you know, we're in college and we don't have millions of dollars to spend. But I had saved all of those shops, and I was like, okay, I think I really want to be in LA. So I kind of researched a lot of smaller businesses and smaller brands that I personally enjoyed, just to see if I could get experience. And I honestly just emailed all of their press emails. They usually have it publicly on their websites. And I would just email them all and, you know, let them know a little bit about who I was and, you know, what I was trying to do. And, you know, some at the time it was like a really big thing to, you know, get college credit. So you kind of would ask, like, do you have these opportunities? And, you know, what's that like? And so I was able to connect with a number of places, and I ended up at a small kids headwear line. And I mean, the world is so small. It was funny. I think my cousin actually knew the business owner's husband. So it really, like, the world just completely connected. And her business was really small. I think it was one other girl that was helping her, and she also was in PR. So that was something that I was kind of exposed to, just being in that environment. Really from there is when I got my experience just working at a, you know, anywhere in LA. And from there I really enjoyed learning about, you know, even just Shopify. Like, those are things that they don't teach you in school. They don't teach you how to go on a Shopify platform or navigate web shops. So I really got all of my experience there. It was great because we would go get swatches in downtown LA, and I got to kind of experience all of these things. And that's when I really found my love for working for smaller companies, because you get to wear so many hats. You're not put in a box and, you know, told to stick to your task and your title. And that was really fun for me to explore all of the options. And from there, I connected really well. And really just made connections. And that's how I kind of started working at Yeezy. And at the time, I was working just on special projects, like, you know, certain individual projects. I was still in school. And I went back for my last year, and I think one of the fashion shows was starting. And I really just started working on that. And that was like the first big thing that I kind of got thrown into so quickly. Um, and I mean, I'm grateful that I had that opportunity, and that opportunity presented itself for me to really push the boundaries of what I didn't even know I could do. And I always would tell people, I mean, if I had to sit and think about, you know, what I did there, putting on a fashion show, I knew nothing about the fashion world other than, you know, the small headwear company that I worked for. It was like a kids line. And just really navigating that space was really, really mind blowing to me. And I think it helped me prove to myself what I was capable of. And you really don't think about it a lot in the moment. But then when you take a step back, you're like, oh, wow, I did something and I accomplished something that I didn't even know I was capable of doing, with very little knowledge of, you know, fashion shows and the fashion industry. And you see things on TV, it doesn't give you all of those tools. So just to be able to see it inside it out, that's really how I got started. And from there, I kind of I worked as like a PR account coordinator, and I worked on, you know, a number of press things for Yeezy, and got, you know, experience in PR, and also just event coordinating and organizing, and just having this crazy, you know, multitude of experiences. So I really just got thrown into that. And then I finished out my last year of college, did a few projects off and on in between then. And then I picked up in Arizona, and I drove to LA. I didn't even go to my own graduation. My parents were totally supportive, which I'm super grateful of. But I was like, I'm ready to start. I'm ready to go. So I think that was what really excited me, just, starting out.
Great story. I'm learning a lot about Katie. Katie is a friend of mine, but learned a lot about her story just now. And real quick, I just want to break that down for a lot of the listeners because sometimes, as a college student, you get wrapped up in always going to these bigger name companies and interning with these big name companies. And sometimes, and I always say a lot of the times when you intern with these smaller companies, you learn way more rather than being stuck into one space. And because of that, you're able to interact with not only the company more, but then the people that work at the company and the people that they know as well, which allowed you, it seems like, to really navigate into, a dream career of working in LA that you really wanted to accomplish. And even prior to that, you just doing your research and emailing all these people. And we always talk about it like cold emails, cold DMs, right? If you really want to connect and meet these people, you have to put yourself out there. But the key to that, and what you talked about, was what separates me from others, right? And you talked about, okay, this is what I wrote, but I wrote about, hey, I'm this person and this is who I am. Because at the end of the day, it's more so when you're working with someone on a smaller level, you have to have a relationship fit. And it's not just about what you know, but it's about who you know, your relationship with them, and making sure that you all can work and not bat heads when working as well.
Yeah, I just kind of wanted to build on top of that. Where do you kind of, I guess, draw the line? Because you were mentioning that you emailed like a ton of companies out in LA, kind of just trying to get your start out there. Where do you draw the line between this is like a company I really connect with versus this might be a good opportunity for me that could like maybe lead into something else? Because I feel like I've had kind of difficulty like figuring out, hey, maybe this might be good for me to, get some experience at this internship and then kind of work my way to like, I guess, narrowing down to what I want to do versus this is a company like I'm passionate about, because you can't, I guess, necessarily get to, I guess, your dream job in one go. So where do you like, how do you decide whether or not a company is a good fit for you?
Personally, my biggest thing was I don't know if they are. You never know if a company, you can like the company, and that's as far as you can get until you get in the environment and you're pushed, to a certain limit. You can see what you're really about to experience. My thing has always been just to experience all. I mean, you reach out to all of these places and you don't know who's going to respond and what they're going to say, and you also don't know the work culture. You don't know the work environment until someone gives you the opportunity to interview. I would say interview at every single place. Don't put so much pressure on yourself that this one step is the end all be all and you really have to stick with it for 10 years. And I think when I went into it, I felt pressured. I was like, oh my gosh, can I see myself being at this place for 10 years? And it was too much pressure. You really think about that stuff when you're there and you're working there and you're fully, in it and invested in it and thriving, or not thriving, but then gaining experience. So personally, like I said, I would just, email every single place and just interview. That's the first step to understanding what your views are. You might not even know what your views are. You might not know what you like. You might not know what you want until you interview and they tell you, well, this is what the job is like. This is, what we're looking for. And this is how we operate. And you might not even know what you like until they say all of those things in front of you. And even then, which everybody knows in the world, no matter what industry or, job you're in, it's not always what it seems. They could give you this whole speech about what the business is like and how it's run or what the tasks are going to be. But at the end of the day, depending on what company you're going into, you can get an idea when you meet people or when you talk to certain people what it really will end up being. And regardless of that, you can never, you can never guess or predict, but being in that, you just have to feel out, what it is. And I emailed every single company that I thought was cool, that I liked, that I enjoyed, that I was like, I could see myself working for that brand, knowing nothing about them, but getting the experience of just emailing and seeing what they're saying and just practicing writing an email and writing back and forth and, you know, emailing these companies. It's so hard to figure out what you're supposed to write. They don't teach classes on cold emailing people and giving your information. And you also don't know who's on the other end of it, who's really reading it, who's seeing, I am so and so and I go to this school, and then they might not read anything else after. You don't know if you'll get a response. But just putting yourself in that situation and challenging yourself to say, okay, this is, a process. This is something that I can really learn from. I mean, that's the biggest takeaway out of just cold emailing. And I think when you're in that process, like I remember I emailed somebody, I don't remember what brand it was, but I remember I was like, I'm not going to get a response. And they emailed me back and they had told me, we're interviewing, but just not right now, please. And right now, I think it was like that week or those few weeks, and, we'll be in contact with you. We definitely looking, but it's just like not happening at this very second. And I was like, okay, what do I do? Like, that was like one of the first emails I got. I was so excited, and she never emailed me back. And I was like, okay, now what do I do? So I was like, you know what? She's never met me. What does it hurt? I'm going to follow up. And I remember just emailing like, hey, I'm so sorry to bother you, but I just wanted to follow up. I know, you had said in a few weeks or whatever it was. And she was like, thank you so much for following up. We really appreciate that. That is, something that we really look for. And I remember just feeling so validated in that. And it seemed so small, but it was something I never knew how to do. And that's what I would say. I mean, later, down the path or down the road, I worked for, I was an account coordinator for PR, and that's really how I learned how to formulate real emails to people. And then you kind of find out it's not this big, pressurized thing. And until you're, maybe you're doing a pitch, and I didn't even really do many pitches in the role that I was in, but just corresponding back and forth and, learning the vernacular and what is kind of weird to say, or the way you phrase it, or, how you follow up. And even, my little sister, she's like, how would you formulate this email? And I'm like, oh my gosh, of course I would love to explain that, because people don't tell you how to do that. They don't, there's no class on how to correspond with emails, even when you're in the workplace. So just that whole process, I would definitely say, you don't know what you like. You don't know what you're going after until you're given the opportunity to interview and even just get in the room and talk to somebody. And sometimes I remember I would call. I don't even know. I don't think anyone really would speak to me in depth, but they would give me an email, or, they would say, reach out to this person. Nowadays, I don't think very many websites have phone numbers, but a lot of them have emails, and they're reading them, believe it or not. And it's, I would say now it's the return of emails is probably greater than you'd expect. It's just that the opportunity, you never know if it's there or not. That shift of what's even available, because that's not even really out there all the time. So I remember even looking up emails, and I was like, I don't even know if they're hiring. I kind of targeted, are you looking for interns? And sometimes people would respond back with, other titles or other things. And I would kind of like research the titles, and then it would catapult me into a whole different level of research. And then I would email another company, and then I would ask, like, are you guys looking for, anybody in administrative, roles, or e-commerce, assistants, or anything like that? And it kind of, you sometimes do get a response, because you don't know what they're going to say. I mean, you don't know what's available. They don't publicize that too much. But I remember that was something that I had a hard time researching as far as like roles. And that's usually why people don't respond, is because there really is nothing available. But if there is, they're always looking, and they will respond. Even if it's a no, at least you get one.
So you mentioned that kind of emailing and formatting kind of took some getting used to, and what are some of the things that I guess one of your biggest takeaways from like getting into the industry that maybe took some adjusting or took some maybe getting used to and learning how to do?
I definitely say the email thing was a big thing for me, because a lot of the time that's the first, quote, personality reflection, of who you are. And I remember, and even now I would get emails and you could kind of know who's on the other end of it. I mean, you try not to judge, but you can make a little bit of an assumption of, what person it is, and, what experience they have just in the way that they speak. And it doesn't mean that they're not worth anything. It kind of helps you understand, like, okay, gauging responses. I think that was the biggest thing for me, was just navigating that. Maybe speaking more comfortably in the workplace, feeling like your opinion is worth more than just your opinion, and really knowing your worth. I mean, it's so hard. There's so much pressure to feel like, I mean, with Instagram now, I mean, even back then, Instagram was a big deal when I was looking for jobs. And I say back then, like it was 20 years ago, but seriously, that's how, much the world has shifted. Really, when I say that, is a reflection of that. But there's so much pressure because you see all these people who have all these jobs and it looks like this big glamorous life, and you feel like, oh, what, I need a really cool job, and I really have to present myself. And there's just so many different avenues now to network. But that definitely hurts your spirit. It hurts your self-confidence, because you constantly compare yourself to other people out there, and you don't know what people are going to think about you. It's appearances, your Instagram profile, like your personal appearance. It's really everything. And but I will say, working in an environment where you feel that you are best represented. And I always say this kind of in age. Age is a huge factor in feeling more confident, because you're like, okay, I'm amongst other people that are like me, that are my age, and maybe we all have different paths. We come from all different walks of life, different areas of the world, but they're my age, and that's something that I had talked to my friend about. When she was at, I think it was Sears, and she's like, it's just older people. Like, it's so hard to connect, and you feel so disconnected in a place where you're supposed to feel connected amongst how many other people working in an office. And that's intimidating in and of itself. So I would definitely say finding your voice is really what it is. Finding your voice and knowing your self-worth and what you deserve to be a part of. And, you'll always be a part of different, groups or jobs or whatever it is, and you'll feel like, does my opinion really matter? Am I being too assertive? And if I'm assertive, are people thinking that I'm aggressive? And are they judging, this guy's new, and he's giving all these opinions. And learning how to navigate conversations in real life and making people feel comfortable in the environment, and speaking to everybody kindly, no matter how frustrating it is, or no matter how opinionated it might sound. I think when you always present yourself really just wholesome and like patient and understanding, people are so much more receptive no matter what age. And I think that's like the biggest thing for our age group, is that people are like, okay, this person's coming in, they're a Gen Z, or they're, we're titled and as that, and they think we're so entitled and we don't work hard and we don't put in hours, or, you know, we don't care about, you know, X, Y, and Z things that maybe our parents cared about, you know, in their work environment. So in the fashion industry, it's so much more brutal in the beginning. Um, and, you know, 10, 15, 20 years ago, people didn't even share information, you know, like I was reading a book written by a hairstylist, and she was like, posting videos of a hairstyle was absurd because people were like, why are you sharing the secrets of what you're doing? It's like sharing, now it's like the world overshares. They'll share every single thing about their life in, you know, in a 5-second video or a 10-second clip. And you know everything they've done, everything they've eaten, everything they've said, every person they've talked to, you know. So I think just really understanding who you are in a world that is oversaturated with a lot of content and a lot of people and a lot of personalities, and feeling comfortable to say those in a way that doesn't scare people is a skill. And that's definitely a big skill that I learned, you know, having patience and dealing with multiple personalities. So there's just so many other people that come from different places and have different experiences, and, you know, to everybody, their path, their job, whatever it is super important to them and they think it's super valuable. So just being accommodating and understanding everybody is the biggest misconception about being in a work environment, for sure.
Beautiful. One thing you talked about that I want to ask about is talked about the soul, right? And caring for yourself. And I think, you know, in a fast-paced environment like fashion, self-care is hard. And especially, not especially in bigger markets, let's just say LA, right? LA is a bigger market. There's a lot of competition going on. So for you, how do you practice self-care in such a fast-paced environment?
Oh, I think it's just finding what your piece is. Everybody's piece is different. I don't get out and go on a walk as much as I probably should because I'm stuck inside on calls and emails all day, or finishing something that I really, really want to finish because I don't want to do it the next day and scramble around. Yeah, I mean, just like as simple as going outside and breathing fresh air, going on walks. That's something my boyfriend always tries to get me to do, is like, let's go for a walk. It's nice outside. So that's what I really try and do for myself. As much as I love TV, I don't watch it nearly as much as I'd like to. So sitting down and completely vegetating on the couch and watching a couple episodes of whatever it is, you know, that's to me is self-care sometimes because I don't have enough of that. Even like I'll find myself without even knowing driving home from work. I mean, pre-pandemic, and my day is so filled with, you know, so many things going on, and I'll find myself driving home and there's no music, nobody talking, it's completely silent. And that is even peace to me. It might be so weird because it's LA, but I really value that. Just having peace and quiet. And it's funny for me because I'm an extrovert, so I love being around people and, you know, talking to people and just interacting with human beings. But I realized that there's a point when that part of my life became really big, and very present, which is my job. Then I was like, okay, I love it, but I need to make sure that I'm creating a space in my world for silence, or, you know, something for me. So, I mean, I would love to say, give you the speech that I'm like a huge meditator and, you know, it's great, but for some reason it doesn't work for me. But I've done it a couple times, like at night, and I think that has helped, just for me to like force myself to stop looking at my phone or anything like that. But I'm not like I wake up in the morning and I meditate or anything. It's never been a routine of mine. But even like making my coffee with my espresso machine is like something that I love doing, and it's peace to me. It makes me excited. Organizing my home is exciting. I'm like trying to organize everyone's home. Everyone's like, I'm moving in, or I'm like, if you need help with organization, I am your girl. Call me. So like stuff like that, and really just finding peace in your environment. I like to keep my home, like I have candles, and I clean a lot. I like to have it feel very homey. Like I said, just keeping things organized. That's like my piece. I'll sit all day and I can organize a whole cabinet. And that's like what I consider my version of meditating. So that's my self care.
I love it. I love it. And you are the queen of organizing. I cannot I, I've seen it. I've seen it. It's really cool. I aspire to it one day, hopefully.
We can all use that in our lives.
Going off of that, being in quarantine, how has that affected your job and like I guess the day-to-day things you do, especially when dropping something new like seventh collection? Like how does that like I guess change your like work, like being fully remote? And like what have you done to kind of like adjust to working remotely?
Yeah. I mean, working for Fear of God has been one of my greatest joys in life. There's always something going on. There's always something, new. And it's very, very busy. So I'm so grateful during this pandemic, that we were able to stay employed and keep busy. And I'm someone who likes to be busy. I like to have work. I like work, which is why the peace thing is super helpful for me to kind of have more boundaries. But it's just been more difficult in that communication is a lot more challenging, because you're used to sitting in an office and looking over to someone and asking them a question. Now, yes, you're a phone call away, but you're disrupting, maybe the flow of work when you're typing an email or working on something. And you can't turn to the next person and ask them a question. You can't, have an in-depth conversation just for like 2 to 5 minutes about, something going on that we all need to work together on. And then another person can come into that conversation. So communication is just, it's challenging. I mean, I'm a super over communicator. I like love communication. I encourage it in the workplace, just with myself. And that in and of itself is very challenging to kind of go through with everybody who has, different levels of jobs and different tasks for the day, and kind of accommodating those things and being mindful of that. So during COVID, that's probably the biggest thing, because I've just been so used to working in an office. Other than that, I mean, it's really just the environment. I miss, working with people every day. I miss going to lunch. Like, all the people I work with were like, we just miss going to lunch with each other and being able to do that. And also just not going out in the world and feeling worried about what is it that, you're risking yourself and everyone else around you. And that probably gets to you a little bit more than anything else is, what's the risk that you're taking every time you step outside, or even just going to the grocery store now. I mean, we work from home, but going to the grocery store, you're like, what risk am I taking here? So yeah, I mean, it's kind of affected both work and personal life. And I'm sure you guys can relate too, just, being being in a whole different city, and LA is so different, and even my parents in Sacramento, it's different from being in LA. So yeah, that's probably the biggest thing.
Definitely. And as we come to the close of the podcast, what do you feel like someone who's interested in the fashion industry, maybe wanting to be in LA, work in a similar space as you, what could someone start doing tomorrow that could help them to get into that space?
We'll probably say the same thing that I'm sure a lot of other people have said, things that, Mo, you talk about a lot. I listen to the podcast. So yeah, it's really just connections and networking and meeting people. And right now it's so hard to accept that because we cannot do that. We can't go out and connect with people. But the world is so small that you don't realize, when we do get back in this, more normalized environment, connecting with people and, talking to people and even just meeting people who are willing to connect further. That's really a conversation that I had with someone the other day, was having someone and meeting someone who works, in a certain place or for a certain person or in a certain industry, and them being so willing and accommodating to help you, connect with other people, because it's hard to just meet one person. Sometimes all you need is just one person, but if you can't even do that and you don't know how to connect with people in that way, it does make it really difficult, and it can be really discouraging for moving forward and being in the industry. So, I mean, yeah, that's why anyone I meet, I'm like, what can I do to help? That's really why I was like, I'm happy to do this podcast, because that's something that I found both difficult and amazing, is meeting people who are so incredible and want to help you and want to help you get introduced, to certain people, or connecting with certain people and just talking to people. I mean, my biggest thing when I would meet people would just get to know them. I wasn't asking for them. I didn't need anything from them. And maybe it's a pride thing also to be like, I don't want to ask you for anything because I don't need help, type of thing. But also just connecting with people and understanding, like, where did you come from? How did you get your start? And I met a lot of people that weren't in the fashion industry, but, are in marketing, or, you know, um, or in other industries, or work for like actors and actresses businesses, and how they got started in Hollywood. And you'll find that you guys know a lot of the same people. I met so many people down the road that I never would have been connected to, but they're somehow connected to somebody that I'm connected to. So right now, I mean, it really just starts with getting to know your community, getting to know the people that, you go to school with or that you work with, and really just diving into those conversations about, like, how did you get your start? How did you end up here? What did you want to do? Even these conversations that we're having now, which is why I love what you guys are doing, because having those conversations of getting to know someone is really difficult for people, depending on, your personality, or depending on where you fall on the quote totem pole. You don't really know how to have those conversations. And a lot of people will feel, or some people will feel, you're trying to get something out of them, and other people will just really want to connect and get to know you, and from there develops, a further relationship of like, well, I know this person and let me know. And I've had so many conversations now where I'm maybe 2-3 conversations in with a person. It's not the first conversation, but they're like, oh, I know so and so, let me know if you need me to connect you guys, or if you ever need this, or they think of something else, like, if you ever know anyone in there, like, or need anyone in there, I can help you with that. And that's how really you can just talk to people. I would say it's not even just like networking and going on, online and finding people to just randomly chop it up with, like we're on AIM in 2007, but just really like talking to people and getting to know them. And even like in my own workplace, at our office, I'd love to just hear people's stories and connect with them on a personal level. There's nothing to get out of it, except that you become closer, with the people that you work with and the people you're around.
That was a bar talking about Abe in 2007.
On that all day, every day. My parents, I'm surprised they didn't know how to block it, but they blocked me from being on the computer because I was on it all the time.
As we wrap up, my last question is always, and this is for everyone in the conversation today, if you had to describe your last few days or maybe a week and pair it with a song, an artist, or an album, which of the three would it be and why? Just a brief why, nothing crazy.
I would say, this week, probably like jazz music.
Mm.
Or like Kenny G, saxophone, like just anything soothing. When I'm working a lot, especially at home these days, I can't have songs that I can, like, I know the words or I can sing along to or rap along to, because I will get so distracted. So just having, like, not sitting in complete silence when I'm on email sometimes is nice to just have that, on. So yeah, just non-vocal music.
I like that. I like that. Kenny G on the sax, killing it. Christian, what about you?
For me, I would say there's this new song called Gravity. It's with Brent Faiyaz and Tyler the Creator. It's really good. It's like real smooth, like, and it's like I like it because like it's not all songs can be like daytime and nighttime, and like you can kind of listen to it during both. So it's definitely been playing it a lot. But I also relate to not being able to listen to music with like words in it, because I always listen to like study beats, the one with like the girl who's like on the computer on YouTube, and it's just like lo-fi kind of um, beats, just so you're not like sitting and working like in complete silence.
I relate to that. I will go with, that's hard. Oh, I've been listening to a lot of Kid. I think the song is Blessed with him and, is it Skip Marley? One of the two. I can't remember. It's one of the younger Marley kids, but that was just the vibe. I'm really into like Afro beats, but yeah, that's my spot. That's where I'm at.
Those are good. That's a good one.
Yeah. Well, Katie, we want to thank you for jumping on here and being a part of the podcast. You dropped a lot of gems and took us on your journey through the fashion industry, which was so beautiful. I learned so much about you. And we like to just really give our flowers to those people who are out here crushing it. So we give everyone a round of applause on our podcast. That's how we get down. And yeah, it was a great conversation. And, you know, I just want to say this on camera while we're filming, but I think you got to, you know, come out here and talk more, because, you know, you was in here, you had a great pace, had a great tone with the conversation, and you had a lot of great things to say. So we got to hear you talk more. That's what I'm saying, you know.
Thank you. I mean, I'm so happy to do this. Thank you for having me on. And I love what you guys are doing. I love this space you've created for everyone. And I think it's not done enough, at least that I'm aware of. And I love that I can support you as my friend, but also just anyone, you know, people like Christian. And it's so great that you have interns like this to really pair up and have a further discussion about what it's really like. That was my personal journey and figuring out how to get started. It was a very unconventional path, and it really is not this cookie cutter one way, you know, path that you can go on. There's so many different avenues. So thank you for giving me this platform to share.
Of course. Well, oh, go ahead, Christian. Sorry.
I just wanted to give my thanks too. Thank you for taking time out of your schedule to kind of talk with us and share some knowledge and some insight into, I guess, your journey and how you got to where you are. So yeah, thank you.
Yeah.
Beautiful. Well, to our listeners, thank you for listening, whether this is your morning routine, your nighttime routine, or, you know, your little snack break during lunch. We are out. Skr, skr.